Welcome to Hazards and Risks, presented by the Maritime Institute of Technology and Graduate Studies, MITAGS, as part of the MSAFE Towing Vessel Safety Series. In this lesson, we'll talk about the difference between hazards and risks, how to identify them, how to manage them, and how to keep them from hurting you. Hazards and risks are part of life. Every tug and towboat is full of hazards, and every day we make decisions involving risk. If we learn to recognize hazards and properly manage risk, we increase our chances of coming home safe. Hazards can be defined as conditions, events, or situations that could lead to or contribute to an unplanned or undesired event. The fuel that runs your engine is a hazard because it could set your whole boat on fire. The electricity that brings you light is a hazard because it can electrocute you. Slippery decks are hazardous because they can make you fall and break a leg, or worse. Confined spaces are hazardous because they may contain toxic gases, explosive vapors, or low levels of oxygen. Cranes and forklifts help move heavy loads, but they can injure workers who get in their way. Darkness, heavy seas, fog, ice, and shallow water are hazards we have no control over. They are part of our environment, whether we like it or not. A raised door sill is a tripping hazard, but it serves an important purpose by keeping water from coming inside. Lines and wires under tension are a hazard, but we need tight lines and wires to maneuver ships and barges. It's pretty hard to push on a rope. So if hazards are all around us, how come we don't get hurt more often? The answer is that hazards don't have the power to hurt you unless you interact with them. Left alone, hazards are harmless, at least to you. For example, high winds, flammable cargo, and confined spaces are hazards, but mainly to people out on the water. If you're sitting at home watching football, you probably won't be affected. An icy road is a hazard, but only if you choose to drive on it. If you're staying at home with your car in the garage, it's not a problem. Shallow water is a hazard, but it will not cause you harm unless you leave the navigational channel. The angle grinder presents a number of hazards, but until you turn it on, it is basically a paperweight. A chemical spill is hazardous, but only if you approach the scene. Here is a list of hazards found aboard towing vessels. In a moment, we'll look at a more detailed list for each of the following categories. You might want to pause the video and write them down as we go. See if you can think of any others that apply to your boat. So our boats are full of hazards, our world is full of hazards. How do we stay safe? We stay safe by measuring risk. Risks are the ways in which hazards can hurt you, or cause damage to property or the environment. We increase our risk when we ignore hazards, or fail to recognize them. In this picture, someone has left a manhole cover open. The open hole is a hazard. With no one around, it cannot cause anyone harm. Risk comes into play when somebody walks through the area. The risk is that somebody could fall into the hole and injure themselves. The open hole is the hazard. Falling is the risk. Risk management is all about recognizing hazards, determining how they can hurt us, and taking the appropriate actions. In this case, the appropriate action is walking around the hole. Risks are the ways in which hazards can hurt you, or cause damage to property or the environment. Risk exists when activities are performed in the presence of hazards. Until you begin your activity, you are usually not at risk. Therefore, it makes sense to evaluate hazards and risks before taking action. We can't always avoid hazards, but we can choose how we manage them. Gathering information, asking questions, making decisions, all help evaluate the risk. Above all, it means keeping your head in the game, not getting distracted, and always paying attention.